We're looking at attitude and we're looking at perspective. We're looking at two different things that work together, and this is a great story about perspective from two individuals. One is a son, and the other one is a mom. And if you've listened to Chuck Swindoll at all, you've probably heard this story, but this is where I got it from. He says, "Dear Mom, our scoutmaster told us all to write our parents in case we saw the flood. They saw the flood on TV and we're worried. We're okay. Only one of our tents and 2 sleeping bags were washed away. But luckily, none of us got drowned because we're all up on the mountain looking for Chad when it happened. Oh yes, please call Chad's mother and tell him he's okay. He can't write because of the cast. I got to ride in one of the search and rescue jeeps. It was neat. We never would have found him in the dark if it hadn't been for the lightning. Scoutmaster Webb got mad at Chad for going on a hike alone without telling anyone. Chad said he did tell him, but it was during the fire, so he probably didn't hear him. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this. Did you know if you put fire on gas, the gas can will blow up? The wet wood still didn't burn, but one of our tents did. Also some of our clothes. John is going to look weird until his hair grows back." I'm not going to be able to read this. Oh my goodness. "We'll be home on Saturday if Scoutmaster Webb gets the car fixed. It wasn't his fault about the wreck. The brakes worked okay when we left. Scoutmaster Webb said that a car that old, you have to expect something to break down. That's probably why we can't get insurance on it. We think it's a neat car anyways. He doesn't care if we get it dirty, and if it's hot, sometimes he lets us ride on the tailgate." Oh my goodness, this is not going to work. It gets pretty hot with 10 people in the car. He let us take turns riding on the trailer until the highway patrolman stopped and talked to us. Scoutmaster Webb is a neat guy, don't worry. He is a good driver. In fact, he is teaching Terry how to drive right now. But he only lets him drive on the mountain roads where there isn't any traffic. All we ever see up there is large logging trucks. All right, focus. This morning, all the guys were diving off the rocks and swimming out into the lake. Scoutmaster Webb wouldn't let me because I can't swim, and Chad was afraid he would sink because of his cast. So he let us take the canoe across the lake. It was great. You can still see some of the trees under the water from the flood. Scoutmaster Webb isn't crabby like some scoutmasters. He didn't even get mad about the life jackets when we didn't wear them. He has to spend a lot of time working on the car, so we're trying not to cause him any trouble. Guess what? We have all passed our first aid merit badges. When Dave dove into the lake and cut his arm, we got to see how the tourniquet worked. Also, Wade and I threw up. Scoutmaster Webb said it probably was just the food poisoning from the leftover chicken. He said they got sick that way with the food they ate in prison. I'm so glad he got out and became our scoutmaster. He's so cool. He said he sure figured out how to get things done better while he was doing his time. I have to go now. We're going into town to mail our letters and buy bullets. Don't worry about anything. We're just fine. Love, Cole. P.S. How long has it been since I had a tetanus shot? So anyways, that's just a very funny look at perspective. And you can think as if you were his mom, just how worried you'd be. But for Chad's really not that worried at all about what's going on, and he's just having a good time. So week 2, for those of you that weren't here, we'll just do just a real quick recap about what is going on. We're going to look at a couple men in the Bible. We're going to look at Job, we're going to look at Jonah, and we're going to look at David, of some guys who had the proper attitude, and one guy who didn't have the proper attitude, Jonah, and look at how the Lord used these things in their lives. And we're also going to we looked at Numbers 10 and 11, and we looked at the children of Israel and how they were murmuring and grumbling and complaining immediately after God had taken them after captivity, like literally in the next verse. 400 years, and they were wishing and hoping and praying that they could go back to what God had already given them. And God, being the God that he is, said, okay, you want meat? I'll give you meat. And he gave them more meat than they could ever eat, and slew a large portion of them. And so we were kind of thinking about that when we stopped last week. I left you with one verse, two verses actually, in Habakkuk chapter 3, talking about how there's no fruit on the vine, the grass withers, there's no animals in the pen, yet it says, I will rejoice in the Lord. In spite of what all happens, in spite of what the Lord brings your way, and the things that come into your life, what is your response to it? And what we had talked about last week was your emotional response from an attitude standpoint is a response to your Creator of what He's given you. Thankfulness, gratefulness, praise, thanksgiving, all of these things, that is a response. Frustration, anger, resentment, that is a response. And so what we looked at was your response, we're not responding to one another. This is at a whole nother level. We are responding to our Creator with our emotions and with our attitudes, which we are in control of, or should be, every single moment of the day. And that's kind of what we looked at before we stopped. So let's look at Romans chapter 8 and verse 28. I'm going to read these fairly quickly here. So in light of what we looked at in Numbers, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose, thinking about what had happened in Numbers. And then in Jonah chapter 4, verse 1, Jonah chapter 4, verse 1, here's our first instance of a guy who, you could read the whole book, back and forth. Yeah, Jonah went and did what he was supposed to do when God asked him to go to Nineveh, but he didn't really want to do it. It just says that he did it, and so then the Lord worked in his heart, and then the second time, obviously after the fish, he went there. In chapter 4, verse 1, it says, "But it displeased Jonah exceedingly." This is after the Lord had talked with him, and he was angry. Now, this is not, again, Chris talking to Dave. This is Jonah talking to God, and it displeased him, and he was angry. Exceedingly angry, it says. And he prayed to the Lord and said, "O Lord, is it not this what I said when I was yet in my country? This is why I made haste to flee to Tarshish. For I knew that you are a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love," something Jonah was not, "and relenting from disaster. Therefore now, O Lord, please take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live." And the Lord said, "Do you do well to be angry?" And we know the answer to that. No, being angry is never a good thing. And immediately Jonah went out of the city and sat to the east of the city and made a booth for himself there and sat under it in the shade till he should see what would become of the city. Basically, he pouted. Went over there, wasn't happy with what the Lord had said, and he was exceedingly angry. A response from Jonah to God. Let's look at a good response. Psalm 145, verse 1, "I will extol you, my God and King, and bless your name forever and ever." Could David do that if he was harboring resentment and anger and frustration and bitterness and all that? No, he couldn't. Obviously, those things were in check for him to be able to say that he would bless the Lord forever and ever. Every day I will bless you and praise your name forever and ever. Is there any time there where he could be angry towards the Lord? No. It says, every day I will bless you. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised, and His greatness is unsearchable. One generation shall commend your works to another and shall declare your mighty acts. And then he goes on to speak of the mighty acts and the awesome deeds that the Lord does. His heart was right before the Lord, right? He extols the Lord. He blesses His name. Every day I will bless you. You could see David just coming into his courtroom and just being overwhelmed looking at the blessings that the Lord has given him. And so we see the proper perspective in light of what God is doing in his life. So, Psalm chapter 13 and verse 6, he's kind of lamenting back and forth in the first couple of verses here. We'll just do 4 for context. It says, "Lest my enemies say, I have prevailed over him, lest my foes rejoice because I am shaken. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because He has dealt bountifully with me. I jumped ahead. If you look at 1 and 2, he says, how long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel? Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of trust that David has in the first couple verses of 13. And then it's almost like he changes his attitude. But, in light of what I just said, but I have trusted in your steadfast love. I know who you are, God. I know that what you bring into my life, you're going to do for good. But I will trust, and my heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. So this is a beautiful, just a look at how, as human beings, you and I, just like David, there's times when we lament and we get frustrated and things happen in our lives, but then we can immediately change our attitude and say, this is wrong. This is not right. Lord, thank you for what you've brought into my life. Thank you for these opportunities. Thank you for all of the blessings that you've already blessed me with. Thank you for everything that is going on. And Job is a prime example of this as well. There's 41 different chapters of Job going back and forth. And if you read Job 1, starting in 1 and going all the way to 20, we'll just go to 20. It's one thing after another. One servant comes in and says, this happened. The next person came in and said, we escaped, and this barely happened. Another thing, hey, a wind came and struck the house, and your family's dead. I mean, it's just, we've had days like that, right? We've had days where just things just come in, and you're like, oh my goodness, what is going on? Is there something I'm doing? Does this all, some people think, well, this always happens to me. This is par for the course. What was Job's response? Then, after he heard it all, just listened, and all the intel came in about everything that he had lost. Then Job arose, tore his robe, shaved his head, and fell on the ground and worshipped. That is the proper response, right? Could he have controlled all the circumstances? Nope. Could they have happened to anybody? Yep. Did God allow them to happen to Job? Yep. And what is Job's response? How long did it take him? Then, immediately, he said, all right, something's going on here. And he worshiped the Lord. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, past tense, and the Lord has taken away, present. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And in all this, Job did not sin or charge God with wrong. Did he have a right to? Well, in our mind, it would have been very easy to become bitter towards the Lord. I mean, he had all the wealth, he had all the riches, he had all his family there in one place, he had all these different things, and the Lord just took it all away from him. And he didn't charge the Lord with any wrong in light of what he saw. What an unbelievable opportunity for Job to bless the name of the Lord. For you to have the right attitude for yourself and those around you, perspective is everything. And we looked at a couple things. Some people look at discomfort, and really it's growth. Problems, really they're challenges. Rejection, no, it's actually redirection. Triggers, they reveal wounds in you. Darkness actually is a great backdrop to reveal light. And failures are actually lessons. Fears are teachers, and pain creates change. Next to knowing Jesus as our Lord and Savior, nothing is more important than having a positive attitude towards life. Your attitude, just you single-handedly, not other people's attitudes, that's a whole other conversation. Just your attitude can make or break you. It can heal or hurt you. It can make you friends or make you enemies. It can make you happy or make you miserable. It can make you a success or make you a total failure. Wayne Dyer said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, right? This is something that we have control over. God has allowed this arena of our lives to be something that you and I can change every moment of every day, instantaneously when we catch ourselves, right? When we have a thought creep in and we think, oh my goodness, this thought could actually become an action, which could create a reaction. It could create an emotion. It could create all of these different things that ultimately they emit themselves into what we see. And it all begins in our mind. It all begins between our ears. Philippians chapter 4, verse 4 is where we're going to spend most of our time here. You know, there's a lot of different emotions in the Bible that you can look at. I'm looking at more of the positive side, but there is a time, read Ecclesiastes, there's a time to mourn. There's a time to weep. There's a time to cry, you know. Think about when my folks lost Esther. There was a very long period of time where they just sat, didn't do much, right? They just were just contemplating and you know, no doubt remembering the blessings that the Lord had given and all these different things. But there's loss, right? And there's a time for that. But your life cannot be patterned with this emotion. I mentioned that nothing good can come from a negative emotion. Nothing. I mean, you may want to be there, and maybe you may want to bring other people there with you. We know people like that. But nothing beneficial is going to develop from that stagnant place that you find yourselves in. And what does the Lord say? Philippians 4, verse 4. You tell me how much room we have for negative thinking here. Rejoice in the Lord when things are good. Always. I mean, that is pretty self-explanatory and pretty all-inclusive. Always. How about the job? How about the tire? How about the rainy day? How about the loss of life? How about, well, how did Job rejoice? Always. Rejoice in the Lord always. And if you didn't get that the first time, again, I will say, rejoice. Get it in your head. Rejoice in the Lord. Extol the Lord. Bless the Lord. Encourage Him. Rejoice in the Lord always. Well, what if our circumstances don't make it easy for us to do that? Well, now that you have a decision, God has brought something into your life. You're going to be true to Scripture, Philippians 4:4, and look for something to rejoice about? Look for something to be thankful for? Or are you going to rest on your own understanding? Oh, God wasn't right for bringing that. God should have done this. I deserve that. I should get that job. Why didn't I get that home? All of these different things that us in our petty little minds bring up to Almighty God. Rejoice in the Lord always. Philippians 4:8, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, or if there is anything worthy of praise, Paul is like saying, find it, look for it, uncover it. It may not be out in the open. You may see nothing but bleak ground ahead of you, in front of you. If there is anything worthy of praise, think or meditate about these things. Again, how much room is there for self-loathe, anger, resentment, frustration? There's none in this verse. None. No place for this. Whatever is commendable. And how many times do we think on just the opposite of these particular points that Paul is bringing out? It's a high bar, and we're going to fall, obviously. But we need to look for what's commendable. We need to look for what's excellent. Dave and I were talking the other day. We need to look for the best in people, not the worst, right? We can hold ourselves to a pretty high standard, but that doesn't necessarily need to be the standard that we hold everyone else to. Think on these things. Meditate on these things. Have this be the place where you spend most of your time, mentally. You know, this, I don't know if you remember the helicopter, I just thought of this, that crashed in California with Kobe Bryant. This was like a state-of-the-art Dolphin helicopter. I mean, it had all the bells and whistles. There's absolutely no reason why the helicopter should have crashed. And you know what happened? The pilot lost perspective and ended up crashing into the hillside because he thought he was 1,000 feet higher than what his instruments were telling him that, but he was just doing VFR, just looking out the window. And he lost track of where he was. He was disoriented. And he ended up killing himself and Kobe Bryant's family. It's easy to lose perspective in life, right? It's easy to get to a spot where you're really low. It's easy to be really high and lose perspective on where you came from. These are emotions that we go through throughout the day. but ultimately our main emotions should be grounded in the edification and the praise and the loveliness and the commendability and the excellence of the things that God has around us. Our family, our friends, ministry, the blessings, nature. Look for something. Take an inventory. If you're having a hard time, take a piece of paper. The Benjamin Franklin method, put a line down the middle, pros and cons, and start writing stuff out. I guarantee you, the left side, the pros are going to outweigh the cons. There's always something to be thankful for. Deuteronomy 30, verse 19. Today I have given you the choice between life and death, between blessings and curses. Now I call on heaven and earth to witness the choice you make. Oh, that you would choose life, so that you and your descendants might live. This is a verse that has kind of not haunted me, but made me think of different things. I didn't believe life, particularly love, joy, peace, all these things, were choices, but they are. These things are choices that we make each and every day. Circumstances, I thought, played more of a role sometimes, when things happen. But simply choosing love and joy are something that you can do right now. It has nothing to do with your circumstances. It has nothing to do with your upbringing. It has nothing to do with your past. Nothing. It is a decision you can make today. Like I said last week, act the way you want to feel, and pretty soon you'll feel the way you act. These are muscles. Smiling is a muscle that creates a response. Jumping in the water is a response. These are emotional responses to where we find ourselves in life. You can be in a challenging situation today, and you can still have confidence and encouragement and happiness and joy. And we'll look at one person when we end this who did just that. As we think, we change the physical nature of our brain. As we consciously direct our thinking, we can wire out toxic patterns of thinking and replace them with healthy thoughts. Healthy thoughts lead to healthy actions, right? The things that happen outside of us first begin inside of us. They begin as a thought. This room began as a thought, right? This building began as somebody's thought, right? The shirt, these are all thoughts of people, inventors that created things. You're an inventor too, with your thoughts. You are creating, dare I say this, you are manifesting actions with your thoughts. It's a manifestation of actually how you feel. The verse, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The way you think about the life that you see is exactly how you're going to exemplify it. That's a powerful thing that we have in control. I mean, we look at creation and everything around us as just this static thing, and we're kind of caught in the middle of it. But you are making and bringing opportunities in and out of your lives, whether you like it or not. Go walk around with a crabby attitude for a week and see how many people want to be around you. See how many opportunities come your way. I mean, it's a sowing and reaping thing. And we want to be careful what we're patterning. Romans 12:2, do not copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into the new person of changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Changing the way you think changes your perspective, which changes how you act in the world. Paul's words aren't new. He says to change your mind. And it's the central theme of Paul's message. Change your mind. Change how you see things. And you will have a different action that manifests itself in this world. 2 Corinthians 10:5, we demolish arguments and every pretense that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive. Captive. You ever been held captive by something? You ever been enslaved to something? Some of us are captivated, right? We felt that. It's the same thing. Some of us like to work out and our gym holds us captive, right? We can't almost help but want to go in there. Or we can't help but do certain things. We take captive every thought. Do you have that same captivity towards every thought that enters your mind? Every emotion? When you feel anger coming up inside of you, do you take that captive or do you let it run wild? What a good idea. How about be the gatekeeper of your mind and take these thoughts and these emotions captive before they consume you? And let the things, the finally, brethren, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is noble, how about those things? Let them run wild in your mind and in your heart. It's possible. This is not an impossible opportunity here. God has allowed it to be possible. He has the Spirit within you. He has a new heart within you. There's a new mind that's created within you, and you're the steward of it. You're the gatekeeper of this. Take things captive. Isaiah 55, seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. And let him return to the Lord, that he may have compassion on him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. Let the wicked forsake his way. Let the saved person forsake his anger. You can just put whatever you want in there. Forsake these emotions, these things that are riddling you and zapping you of the opportunity that God has in front of you and affecting us. When you decide to have a specific emotion, you affect us, right? Me specifically, when somebody really shows their emotions to me, I choose to not be around it. In fact, I will leave. I don't want to be around a negative attitude. It's addictive, right? It's something I could catch. I don't want that, and neither should you want that. We should give ourselves some of these attitudes that lift up one another, bring each other up instead of tear each other down. To think is easy. To act is difficult. To act as one thinks is the most difficult of all. We need to really take full advantage of this mind that God has given us, this extremely powerful object in our body, and use it for good. Use it for his blessing. Everything begins in the mind. In order to have the right attitude in any given situation, we need to have the right perspective to what we see around us. And that only comes from thinking and dwelling on what is true and what is right. You know, it's easy to look at the world, look at government, look at all these things that are out of our control and form a perspective about them, the wrong perspective, which creates the wrong emotion, which ultimately gives us the wrong actions. And we find ourselves in a place where we really should never be. We have no business being there, but we have harbored and allowed these thoughts to take refuge in our mind and to really control us to some extent. And it's wrong, and it needs to be something that we take captive in our minds. Man's mind may be like a garden, which we may intellectually cultivate or allow to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring fruit. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein, and we will continue to produce their kind. This is not a neutral place. That garden over there, we have ground cover on top. We have all these things to try to protect the weeds from coming through. I guarantee you, if I took that ground cover off of that garden, it's been multiple years, weeds would come out. Little sunlight on there, a little rain, they would start going. We don't want weeds in our garden. We want tomatoes in our garden. So what are we going to produce? Or what are we going to plant? We're going to plant tomatoes, right? With the intent of having a tomato. Philippians 4:8. What are you putting in your garden? What are you thinking about in your garden? Finally, brethren, whatever is pure, whatever is noble, we just looked at those things. Those are the seeds of your life that you are putting in. And you can 100% expect right action and a right response with those right seeds. It can't be any different. You can't harbor resentment and anger and love and affection. They're mutually exclusive. They don't work together. And we have control of that. Just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing the flowers and fruits which he requires, so may a man tend a garden of his mind, weeding out all the wrong, useless, and impure thoughts, cultivating itself towards perfection and the flowers and fruits of right, useful and pure thoughts. Good thoughts and actions can never produce a bad attitude. Bad thoughts and actions can never produce a good attitude. What you put in and focus on will produce the attitude that's right, and what you focus on will always grow. And so it's such a simple equation, but it's simple, but it's not easy. Of taking these, things that the devil plants all around us, this low-hanging fruit, this easy stuff for us to get hold on, and our nature thrives off of it, right? Sometimes we don't want to be happy. We want to just be, gloomy, or we want other people to feel that we're frustrated. And so we emit this frustration, and we all feel it in the room, and it's like, and then the flip side of that is you see somebody who comes into the room and he's just excited and thankful and grateful. You can catch that as well. You feel that, right? And we can be the magnetism that we want in the world just by changing ourselves and not even focusing on anything else. If you're looking for reasons why something is not working out or why God allowed it in your life, you will find it. We only need one reason why we need to do something, not a million reasons why not to do something. If we look around, there's 100 different reasons why, we can do one thing or not the other. And you look at somebody who has taken their life, they found a compelling reason why it wasn't worth it to live, right? Each one of us has found 1,000 reasons why it's worth it to live, right? What is the difference? Do they have circumstances? Do they have difficulties? Do they have bad days and good days? Yeah, just like us, right? It rains on the just and the unjust. Perspective. They have lost their perspective. They have lost the depth of seeing what God is bringing in and out of their life. They may be unbelievers. They may be believers. Either way, they have lost the perspective of the challenges that come their way. They have looked at challenges, discomfort, as just that. Problems as just that, something to run away from instead of challenges. The pain of life is something that they can't handle, when really they can. They just don't know it. And they've succumbed to these wimpy thoughts about themselves and those around them. And they end up ending their life. What a sad place to be. Couple points here as we wrap up. Your attitude reveals who you are, the real you. Your attitude. Proverbs 23:7. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Your things that happen in your life do not make the attitude. You make it. It is a response to what comes into your life. It does not define you. Your attitude always becomes actions or reactions. How you react or act in a situation would show your attitude, the real you. Oh, well, this made me do it. No, it didn't. You already had that inside of you, and you chose that when this came in, you would act in this way versus somebody else who acts in a totally different way. It's your decision. Understand you don't have an attitude just because you had a bad day. All that a bad day can ever do is shake the jar. Remember, I showed that last week of what comes out of you. The reason you and I have a bad attitude is because we have a bad attitude inside of us, just like the jar, and it falls out. Remember, your attitude reveals the real you, and it starts with right thinking. So this is something that we can cultivate like right now. You can change the equation, right? When this comes in, I'm going to think this way. And some of us have a natural tendency genetically to certain predispositions. I mean, it is a real deal. Anger, frustration, addiction, all of these things. You might have the wind at your face, not your back in certain instances. And this is where you really have to go in and turn the knobs of your mind and of your brain and find out, okay, how am I wired? And what is a trigger for me? And what is something that I need to be very careful of when this enters my life, to stop and not react like the pig does, but as a human being, a rational human being, say, okay, I don't want that response. This is natural for me, but I don't want that. I'm instead choosing that. I'm choosing to focus on and to think, Philippians 4, on this, as opposed to react to that. Your attitude, number 2, your attitude is always your choice. Two men can be looking out at the same woods, and one only sees briars, thistles, and weeds, and the other one notices what's in the forest floor. all the beauty around, and every type of tree and bird singing around him. And it makes him in awe of God's handiwork. It all was there for both of them to see. You know, I know people who don't believe in a creator. And it just amazes me that we both can be doing specific things, looking at specific things, and one person sees something and the other person doesn't. One person, you just light up, and the other person just, that was just from 10 million years ago. We're still looking at the same thing with a different perspective. And obviously we have a different outcome as well. So what's the difference? It's attitude. Without a doubt, the human mind is the most awesome creation of God. With it, God has given us the ability to think, to reason, and to choose whether we will focus on positive thoughts or negative thoughts. In every one of our lives, there is the positive and the negative. The choice as to which one we will focus on, feed on, and nurture is up to us. It's easy to feel like a victim in challenging circumstances and situations. We want to understand our negative thoughts, feelings, and experiences, so we place blame on other people, on objects, or events. We look outward to try to make sense of what's going on inside of us. We do this all the time. Why? It's our only way of coping, right? We want to look outside for the problem instead of inside of us. The feelings of being more in control in uncontrolled situations. But here's the problem, is the approach. It takes our own personal responsibility away from us. In our attempt to feel more in control by faulting others or our experiences, we actually strip ourselves of our own power, the control we have of our attitude, of our emotions. That power is lost the moment we become dependent on other people or other things to make us feel a certain way. Whether that feeling is positive or negative, we are no longer taking sole responsibility for our own emotions or experiences when we believe that they are a result of anything other than our own choice. All we can control is this. I can't control you all. I can't control all that out there. That's in God's control. But He's given this to me, and He's told me to guard it, and He's told you to guard it. And so we want to guard this opportunity that we've been given. One last thing, this is a guy from Auschwitz, Dr. Viktor Frankl. Highly recommend you read his book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he was a doctor, obviously, and it says, I'm just going to read a quote from this, a blurb from this book. Dr. Viktor Frankl stood under the glaring lights of the Gestapo court in a Nazi concentration camp. Soldiers had taken away from Viktor every earthly possession, his clothes, his watch, even his wedding ring. As Dr. Frankl stood there naked, his body shaved before these cruel men who tried to take every ounce of dignity from him. At that moment, Frankl said that he realized he was destitute except for one thing. He still had something that no one could take away from him, not even the Nazis. He still had the power to choose his own attitude. And he chose to not give that attitude to his enemies. He chose joy. He chose hope. He chose to be positive and to forgive. So how do you respond when things are brought near you? And then he says, every opportunity is a priceless gift. If we are not learning from the opportunities in our lives, the negative and the positive, shame on us. It is an opportunity. It is a time in history that you may never get again. The loss of a job, the loss of a friend, the loss of anything. These are opportunities. Your perspective better be right when these come into your life, because you're going to miss them. You're going to miss these really gifts that God has given you specifically. They may not have come to me. They may not have come to, some of the things that come to me may not come to you, but they're gifts from your Creator, and you need to capitalize on them. Maybe it's growth. Maybe it's, again, these things that we looked at. Discomfort, problems, rejection, triggers, darkness, failure, fear, and pain. These are natural to the human condition. What are you going to do with them? You going to curse God, Or are you going to say, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away? Blessed be the name of the Lord. I'm going to seize this moment. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if another season is going to come in, but I'm going to take full advantage of this and I'm going to learn from it. And more than likely, it's something that you can change in your own heart to glorify the Lord. Viktor Frankl said, I have everything I need for joy. Everything. And yesterday we looked at a bunch of guys up there who had hundreds of millions of dollars. And more than likely, I think every single one of them kind of exemplified this thought that the resources, the possessions, and all of that, it means nothing. It's just a response of value being given. That's all it is. It just shows that they're creating a lot of value. But it doesn't give true joy. The only one who gives true joy is the Lord Jesus. And where is he? He's in you. I'm talking to believers here. He's in me. So show that. Show the power source you have. Right? Show the emotions that the fruit of the Spirit wants to produce in you. Don't hold back from the one who is wanting to bless you. Again, your attitude defines what you see and what comes your way. It's just an amazing thing that we kind of self-sabotage ourselves. And happiness isn't a conditional state. It is a state of being. Now, oh, well, when I get this, then I will feel this. Well, that's out of your control. How about just take the control and say, I'm going to feel that way now because I want to. So these are the things that we're grappling with in our minds. I'll close with this. An old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. A fight is going on inside me, he said to the boy. It's a terrible fight, and it's between two wolves. One is resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. He continued, the other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, and compassion. The same fight is going on inside of you and inside of every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, which wolf will win? The old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed. Feed the right animal in your life and watch what happens in your life. It will change. And these are the challenges we're up against. You know, there's some days that we do feed the wrong animal, right? And he rages up. It's the flesh and the spirit. It's the same thing. And then there's other times where we can suppress that animal. We can feed the animal inside of us that brings God glory, that brings him everything that he needs and wants in our lives. And he's a giver of good gifts, it says. He wants to bless you. Get out of your own way. Let him do things in your life. And it starts with a proper attitude towards him.